Okay, this is Mishlei 23, 1 through 3, day 2. So when you sit down to eat with a ruler, right, to break bread, to eat, to dine, you should surely understand either what is before you or who is before you. Yeah, I think it still works. I think it still works for who and what. The samta sakin below echa. You should place a knife to or in your throat, in your gullet, in your swallower, if you are a master of your soul. Al tisav lamata mosav, you should not, don't desire lust for his delicacies, vihu lechem kozavim, when it is false food or food of lies. Okay, so, and then Saadia Gaon translated bal nefesh as a lustful or repetitive person, and then lechem kozavim, he said, is non-constant bread, which I had a realization about, which we'll go into. Yeah, okay, yeah. I think my realization is different than yours. Mine is just where he's getting it from. Okay, but I just remembered a word. All right, so our questions were, what is the scenario here? That's the main question. Who is this Moshe? It doesn't matter what kind of person he is. Is this strategy confined to this specific scenario, or can you extrapolate it in other ways, right? Maybe this applies even not with a ruler. Maybe lusting for delicacies is always bad, not just if you're a bal nefesh. Why even focus on eating here? 2, what or who are you being told to understand? What is it? What is stated in Psukim 2 and 3? Like, is this just an introduction to what is in 2 and 3, or is there something else you should understand? And then these are other pieces of advice. 3, what is the hava mina of bin tavin? Right? Why would you not understand? Is it that like you think you already do understand it? Is it that is it that you're gonna understand but not understand enough? Also, why the emphasis? Why the double lashon? 4, what is a bal nefesh? Is it a someone who cares about his life, like nefesh chaim? Is it someone who cares about his soul, like soul? Is it someone who is a taiva-driven person, like nefesh, like animalistic? Nefesh means like animalistic part, according to Ibn Ezra and co. So who is a bal nefesh? 4, who are the audiences? Who is being addressed in Pasuk Aleph? Is that a different person than the one being addressed in Pasuk Beis? In other words, is it saying everyone should understand what is before them, but then if you are a bal nefesh, then you should place a knife to your neck? Or is it saying that, or is the whole thing directed at the bal nefesh? Who's Pasuk Gimel for? That's a question if we have the first approach. 6, what does it mean to put a knife in or to your throat, and why call it your swallower? 7, what does lechem kazavim mean? How are the matamim of this moshel considered lechem kazavim? And then what is the havamina Pasuk Gimel? Why would we think that this is not lechem kazavim? Okay, so the general approach we had yesterday, I'm not going to state a full idea, is we noted that with a moshel, whether that's like a king or a ruler or even a rich person, he is going to have an ulterior motive for inviting you to this meal. Okay, and the danger is that you will misinterpret what's going on here, right? So you'll think, oh, like Haman, right? Oh, he likes me, I'm the best, he wants to do this favor for me. When really we saw in Pirkei Avos that people who are in power will only bring a person close to them for their own benefit, and they will not be concerned with your well-being. So you're going to take this as, oh, this person, you're going to interpret this as goodwill towards you, but really it is davka not. It is goodwill for them, and so in other words, the way you should view this is, don't even view this as, I think the mistake is you should view this is that you're inclined to view this as an act of like ahava or chavra, but this is a contract that you're entering into without having the terms clarified. So you should understand what the terms are of this contract and enter into it. Are you going to be indebted to this guy? Like, is this person going to try to get something out from you? And then if you don't give him what he wants, is he going to resent having spent all this money on you? So like, you should be aware of that. And that's like the general approach we had yesterday. Okay, David, you had an idea about the non-constant bread?
Different approach.
Sure.
From the non-constant bread. Okay, so non-constant bread meaning that he can't just constantly with you.
Yeah.
And I think with Moshel or anyone who's like a higher up person, they have so many different things to attend to. You're not their only thing to attend to. So I want to take a different approach and not say this necessarily the guy has an ulterior motive, as much as you're just not the priority. He has a lot of different things going on. So that bread will be not constant. Maybe right now, like, he does see the value in, say, doing something with you. So right now, like, you're in front of him is a good thing for him. Well, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
But he has 30 other different people he needs to attend to. So this bread won't constantly be by you, but it's going to make its way around.
Yeah.
So, okay. So then with that in mind, then the read here. So if you're coming to eat, whatever it will be, it's something where you are at the moment engaging and you guys are actually doing something right now together. Know what's ahead of you. So know like what potentially would lie ahead. So right now, like, things are great. We're doing things together. So there's this feeling of, okay, great. Like, we're in business together now. Things are going to be great. They're going to stay forever. But I'll jump to Pasuk Gimel and then I'll get to why then Pasuk Bet, given how Pasuk Gimel works. So then I'll take out of the Matamotav is all these different great ideas, all these like great sounding different this and that thing that he has. They sound amazing, but they're not going to be constant. They're not going to be like, oh, he has so many different great business ideas, but to actually have them play out, probably not going to happen because he's going to keep doing it. So because of that, then like don't allow yourself to move wherever you are. Like don't allow like not start twitching and jumping after this next thing. Yeah. Right. Just and then Baal Nefesh, I guess, like that, like being very grounded to what's happening right now. Then if you are that type of person, do not let yourself move from what's happening. And don't just like hope for these future things that the person himself also thinks are. Okay, good. I like the approach. It's good. It's very similar to what we're going to see in Saadia Gaon. The imagery that comes to my mind when you're talking, and this is not too much from personal experience, but I feel like I've gathered this from either hearing about it happening or like movies and stuff, is that I think this actually works better with rich or powerful people, that they're almost like a cyclone or a tornado, that they come in and like they're very powerful, so they can really upset the status quo for good or for bad, so let's take, for example, like a person donates money to a school, a rich person donates money to a school, will come in and then like donate a ton of money to the school and then have a ton of say in like what goes on. And there's a danger that the person will either be, the recipients will either be in a mindset where they're going to depend on this cash flow, or they're going to depend on the relationship, or they're going to like depend on the fact that this is going to like lead to other opportunities, like you're saying. And really, it might, but like you said, like rich people or powerful people have lots of what is it? There's a phrase: they have their thumbs in lots of pies or in lots of pots. They're something like that. They've got lots of things going on for them, and so they might just go on to some other project. Like it's not guaranteed that they're going to be that you're going to be able to like depend on this. And so don't make any false moves, which is a funny thing, because it's saying place a knife to your neck is really saying two things. It's saying focus on what the reality and the present benefit is right now, because if you don't, then you'll get hurt. Like it's not just saying like focus on this thing that you have been given, but it is saying if you try to focus on more than that, then it's going to endanger yourself.
So according to Douglas' approach, it sounds like that you have to make sure that he's on the same page with you.
Yes. Right, meaning the moshel.
Yeah.
Because
look, I'm having this experience right now. With my boss.
Yeah.
In my head, I'm like he's in many different things.
Yeah.
Like, I constantly have to, bug him every day.
Yeah.
So that we're on the same page.
Right. That's actually a good other practical application, which is that it's easy for him to forget.
Yeah.
And you might have to, in other words, he might be willing to do this for you, but you have to conduct yourself differently.
I text him 6:30 in the morning, call him then, because I know that's the best time to contact him. But like the point is, but my only question is like what does it have to do with you being a master of your soul, or an appetitive person, and what does it have to do with
right? So you're not saying that this is an appetitive person, right?
I also do not take lechem because I'm from Saadia Gaon, but I'm not taking Baal Nefesh from him.
Okay, yeah. So the good news is that they don't necessarily have to go together. Okay, but just say again, how are you taking Baal Nefesh, just someone who is like cautious? Yeah, right. Like you care about your well-being, Yeah,
and also
Baal Nefesh is someone who is the opposite of better person.
I wouldn't say opposite, just different. Like we were saying, like in halachic texts say like if you're Baal Nefesh, if you like are really makbid or careful about like things, or actually maybe we're not even saying that. We're saying, nefesh is your life. If you care about your life, then do this.
Yeah. Also, just another thing from work for myself that's not real. I had a meeting with someone yesterday. He was talking about I was talking about different things I could do for this organization, and this guy's tons of different great ideas. Yeah. But actually, so all these different there, but actually pulling through having these things happen is a far different thing. Yeah. So especially it's definitely there's a lot of excitement and oh look at me. Yeah. There's a lot of good things in potential. Yeah. Potential. But and then that was also what's about the keeping that neck to your neck. It's not go ahead and jump on any of these different things. Yeah. Stick with what is here and actually in your reach. Right now.
Right. That gives what do you call it? That is another dimension of this, which is that because powerful or rich people, and certainly kings, they're used to being able to immediately translate their ideas and plans and wishes into reality. So they're going to fire off a bunch of possibilities, and the conviction with which they talk about them is going to be real because they really could implement any one of these things, whereas for an average person who doesn't have those resources, when there's a clear line between daydreaming and fantasizing versus this is actually planning. So what's going to happen is you're going to meet up with this guy, you're going to be infected by his conviction in the possibilities being endless, and you're going to be in danger of trusting in the fact that this is actually going to happen when it's not. This guy just throws out 10 ideas, and maybe he's not even going to do any of them, but they're all equally real possibilities in his mind. But you can't let yourself feel that those are all going to come to fruition. Yeah.
Well, just on that point, I just want to know how this fits in. There are two different types of people, in the business world, right? There's the visionary, and then there's the integrator, the ones who can actually put it in place. The visionaries, most of them cannot practically implement them.
Mm-hmm, right.
But it's two different skills.
Right. Yeah.
So when you say a rich person can, it's real in their minds and they could do it. Do you mean they already have that in place? That they could integrate it with someone?
Not even necessarily. I just mean that if you have a visionary who's rich, who has access to people who can implement their wishes, then in other words, the rich person can bring it about, whether through him or through someone else. That's reminding me of, I don't know if this is going to be applicable because I haven't read this in a while. If you're looking for a biography to read, one of the top biographies I've ever read is Walter Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs had this, there's this phenomenon, he did not name this. Yeah.
On that point, let's say a visionary has 10 different ideas, right? Did you say that having enough here or throw me don't jump at all of them?
Right. Sure, yeah.
Right. Or at least be very careful if you're going to move towards any one of them.
I was thinking as far as that. Yeah.
Yeah. So on that, we're taught, at least in my company, their philosophy is be successful at one business before you move on to the next one. Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely good.
I was picturing there from keep what's in arm's reach in that way. If it's not just your throat, you still reach out. Take what's actually there in arm's reach and not these things you have to go out there for.
So you're more on quantity and qualitative, I guess, in that sense. Because arm's reach for the way I'm looking at it is you do not want to be an arm's reach of 10 different things because you're going to spread yourself too thin.
Yeah, I think they still could work together.
So I don't know how exactly relevant this idea is, but I'm going to quote it anyway. So from this Walter Isaacson, it's not, this is where I read it. Okay, it's a good biography, Walter Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs had this thing that people refer to as the reality distortion field. Okay, and so the Wikipedia article describes it. Reality distortion field, RDF, is a term first used by Bud Tribble at Apple Computer in 1981 to describe company co-founder Steve Jobs' charisma and its effects on the developers working on the Macintosh project. Let me make this a little bit bigger, and it goes through examples. So it says, in chapter 3 of Steve Jobs, biographer Walter Isaacson states that around 1972, while Jobs was attending Reed College, Robert Friedland, quote, taught Steve the reality distortion field. End quote. The RDF was said by Andy Hertzfeld to be Steve Jobs' ability to convince himself and others around him to believe almost anything with a mix of charm, charisma, bravado, hyperbole, marketing, appeasement, and persistence. It was said to distort his coworkers' sense of proportion and scales of difficulties and to make them believe that whatever impossible task he had at hand was possible. Jobs could also use the reality distortion field to appropriate others' ideas as his own, sometimes proposing an idea back to its originator only a week after dismissing it. So this is a very multifaceted phenomenon. But I do feel like this is, and again, Steve Jobs was someone who was a visionary, who actually was able to put stuff into play, into actuality, and who, after Apple became rich and was able to have the means to do this. But I feel like there is a similar phenomenon when you're around people who are rich and powerful, that they're so able to. First of all, they have big egos, right, and they are used to being able to get people to do what they want, and they have the means of doing it, and they can translate their wishes into reality. So it's very easy when you're confronted with a person like this to just get caught up in the reality distortion field and think that you can do things or expect things that really are not reliable. Okay, so I want to do two things. I want to go from David's approach to Saadia Gaon, which is going to be similar, but we'll talk about what the differences are. And then I want to go to Rabbeinu Yonah. And each Saadia Gaon and Rabbeinu Yonah both have good ideas, but then I also want to get methodology out of comparing the way that they take the psukim. Okay, so Saadia Gaon says like this. First thing is and this is not the Saadia Gaon in your packet. This is the Saadia Gaon commentary. So he says, "Pirashti belo'echa gronecha." So I have explained belo'echa, your swallower, to mean your throat. Milashon Targum. Okay, I guess that's answering a question that we asked on the thing was why use that weird term. He's using the Targum. I don't know why. Ubal nefesh ta'ava. Okay, nefesh means tava, bodedes. I think bodedes means that this is the only case of it where it's used this way in Mishlei, maybe. Okay, bodedes means like alone, right? Alone instance of it. Okay, now this is the part I didn't realize yesterday. I knew this, I just didn't associate to it. Kizavim could mean, the word kazav could mean lying. It could also mean inconstant as a completely different meaning. And the thing is, kumo asher lo yichsavu meimav. So its waters are not inconstant. In other words, when you're describing a spring that is always yielding water, that's the opposite of kazav. Kazav means it only is intermittent. Okay, and then the other one, which I never really realized this, in the Prakim and Hollow, we have Chol Adam Kozev. I always translated that as mankind is liars, right? Every man is a liar. He's saying all of mankind is not constant, is inconsistent. Okay, is that's
just so not constant.
Right. I guess the broader category would be not constant, either because you're inconsistent or you can't depend upon them.
Well, I was thinking also not constant in the sense that we're not God, so we're not constant.
That is also true. Yeah.
But that's not something with men though.
Yeah, right. I think the context though is isn't the context of that yeah, but isn't the context of that bitachon and Hashem? So I'm saying it would make sense. Kol Adam Kozev, what is that in is that in 114? No, that's 115. 115. Nope, it's 116. Kol Adam Kozev.
Yeah.
Which number? 11. No. Okay, I guess it's not. Okay, it's not overtly about bitachon, but okay, yeah, fine. It works out though. It is. Man is not God. I will agree to that. Okay, all right. So then Saadia Gaon gives this beautiful explanation. The Indian parsha zo, the idea of this parsha, meaning 1 through 3, lahaz here is to warn you, shelo lahargil es hanefesh lama shelo yasmid, to not accustom your soul. Again, here soul means your animalistic nature, right? Your desires, to something which is not constant. Okay, this is very. I think I want to make an episode on Stoic Jew about this. This is very Stoic Jew. Kagon mi shehizmino hamelech, for example, like one who the king invites him al shulchano to his table. Al yarbe min hamachalim, don't be excessive with eating with the foods. Kadei shelo yurgal lakach, so you don't become accustomed to this. The kasher yachsar lo, and such that when you lack it, yivakshehu shelo beheter, you'll look for it in a way that is not permissible, shelo kadarko, or which is not appropriate to your way. Okay, so he's saying that the subject of the pasuk is being accustomed to things that are not going to be constant. Okay, and the melech is just an example of that. All right. V'chein imasru lo avodasam al yafris beruchim min hasiba hazo. I don't know what this means. Similarly, if they give you their work, their labor, don't be hasty in ruchim for this reason. I don't even know what that means. Okay. V'chein v'kach kol hana'a kula. So too all enjoyments in roy lahashmida. Do not be persistent in, or don't constantly be involved in any hana'a. V'kal v'chomer kol inyan ha'olam hazeh. Okay, all the more so, anything in olam hazeh b'yachas l'gmul ha'olam haba, in relation to olam haba. V'zeh milavad ma sheyagihu mipige hamalchus v'kinasam tahapuchosehem v'hischakusam v'chol hadom alakach. And that is in addition to all of the afflictions of the malchus and their jealousies and their reversals and their hischakusam, their ukvim umischazkim achre matzav hakalkali v'his ashruso v'alulim korega lahavo ke'araso alpiha. I think they're what's the word in English? I'm not sure. Their ability to like overturn things really quickly. Okay, so what he's saying, this is really about becoming used to pleasures, becoming accustomed to pleasures, and what's going to happen is if you become accustomed to these pleasures and then you don't get them anymore, you'll either look for them in an illicit way or in a way that's harmful to you. The king is just an example, and then he extends it to, I wish I knew what this meant. Imasrulo, let me just look at footnote 4. Hamalachim, if the kings give to you, shebederech klal kol kablani avodas hamelach mis ashrim. So if the king gives you a job, okay, then I guess he's saying you could become rich. Don't become used to the job. Okay, for this reason, okay, this position, and then kal v'chomer pleasures of olam hazeh. Okay, so I have an example of this, which I think I gave last year. So this is a really, really small example. So I love coffee, okay, and my dad also loves coffee, and he showed me this product called Third Wave Water, I think, which is a little packet of like it's basically like electrolyte minerals, something like that you put in the water that you use for your coffee, and you put it in distilled water. Okay, and what it does is however like good your coffee drinkers know that like the quality of the water is one of the big things that affects the taste of the coffee, which is why if you're a coffee drinker in New York or Seattle, then you're lucky because the quality of the water is among the best in the country. But what this does is it makes the water even better so that the coffee is perfectly like smooth and unadulterated, and like you get the best out of the coffee. So my dad said, do you want a few sample packets? And I was hesitant because I was like, if I get this and I really like it, it's going to be hard to go back to regular coffee. So I did not listen to this pasuk. I got it, and it was very good. Okay, and then lo and behold, what happened was I ordered it on Amazon, and it added a cost to my coffee, not just from the packets, but also from having to go out and buy distilled water, and also the cost in time of going and like when I'm at Gourmet Glatt or like whatever, having to buy like these things of distilled water. And then I loved the coffee, and I was like, this is not good. Like I became accustomed to it, and I had to like wean myself off of it and then go back to being a normal human being. It is very good. Look, and here's the thing: is like while we're on the topic of coffee, I once asked Rabbi Moskowitz. So I did not start drinking coffee till I came to yeshiva. And I didn't have caffeine really before I came to yeshiva, and I started drinking coffee, and I became dependent on it, addicted, whatever. And I asked Rabbi Moskowitz, like, is having an addiction an imperfection? Okay, because on the one hand, like you can't control it, right? So Rabbi Moskowitz gave a surprising answer to me, and I asked him if it was about coffee, So he gave a surprising answer. He said that if the addiction does not bring harmful consequences, okay, and if you can reliably sustain it, so then what's the harm, right? Yeah, I know. We always talk. So so therefore, like I've had caffeine every day of my life for as long as I can remember, so like, yeah. So like, it used to be that the only cost was like on fast days or whatever, but then whatever, we have workarounds now. So that is an example of this also. Like if you become, or here's another example, like I was using, what was this? We were talking about, this is Rambam Bekius. We were talking about how we have things that we relate to as needs, but they're not actually needs, right? So electricity, running water, plumbing, air conditioning, right? So these are things that objectively speaking, people don't need. The vast majority of humans on earth, or not vast majority, the majority of humans on earth don't have many of these things, okay? So people don't need them, and they don't even need them to be happy, right? Like there are people in third world countries who on the various happiness indices like rate higher than people in our country, So, should you go and break your addiction to plumbing? Like, should you like force yourself to like go to an outhouse? So the answer is like, if there is a chance of it being of it like not being consistent, then yes, it's a danger to become dependent on those things, right? But in this day and age, in this country, with all the people in this room and all the people listening, I think there's not a danger that we will be in a situation where there's no electricity or plumbing. So it's okay that we are dependent on these things, unless there's an apocalyptic world war or Russia sabotages the power grid, in which case we're going to be in a lot of suffering for a long time. Yeah, Russia or China, I should say. Okay, yeah. So that's Saadia Gaon's idea. Okay, so I think it's and also you see a Mishlei thing he's doing. What Koheles would say, okay, is don't become dependent on pleasure. Okay, because you're setting yourself up for unhappiness. Mishlei gives you a specific example of when you're in this specific situation of being with a king and your desires are aroused, then be aware of this principle. Oh, and once you master that, go more in terms of like your job, the position. Like don't become attached to a certain job that you have, and then once you become a master of that, then you can go to pleasures of Olam Hazeh. So he's expanding outward from the particular to the universal. Yeah.
You do not have to answer this question right now, but I just want to throw it out there.
Sure.
Why is Koheles and Mishlei like contradicting? It seems like on the surface it's contradicting each other.
Yeah.
Why? Like,
yeah.
Why not just take the Mishlei route? Like,
so it's a good question. I'll give you the short answer for this now, and then I'll give you the. We can talk about it more at length later. So both Koheles and Mishlei are about. I'll just. Maybe I'll do this another time. Yeah. No, it's an important question. Yeah. Because I have a PowerPoint on it. Okay, now let's go to Rabbeinu Yonah. Okay, any questions on Saadia Gaon? Okay, I think it's a great idea. Okay, Rabbeinu Yonah starts on the next page. Okay, so he says like this: understand what is before you. So I feel like Ariel, this is going to hit home for you. I think you're gonna really like this first idea. If you are one of the people who is eating at the king's table or the people in his palace, okay, you should understand clearly what is before you. In fact, I think I'm gonna jump the gun. I think he's going to be translating bin tavin as you should investigate what is before you. Okay.
It helps when we eat kosher though.
What?
It helps when you eat kosher.
In what?
I don't run into this problem again.
Well, you don't know what he's going to say yet, so you don't know if he runs this problem. Asher, I know one thing he would say is don't think that you don't run into the problem until you know what the problem is. Yeah. Come on. Min. Yeah. Understand. Oh, okay. Come on. Min. Katsesi es ha'ir does not mean when I leave the city, when I depart from the city. So understand from what was before you. Understand from what came before you. So what does that mean? The explanation is bin tavin mi asher lefnecha. Understand from what came before you. Ki tishal v'tachkor al avdei hamelach. You should ask and interrogate basically the servants of the king asher hayu ba'ochli shulchano milifnei kain, who were servants of the king who ate at his table before you. Okay, v'yitu misham, and who left. V'teda ubachanta chelik hayotim, and you should know and scrutinize the people who leave the king's service. Which one of them succeeded and were appeased to their master? And which one of them lost out? V'hisbonin ma haya mishpat ha'anashim u'ma'asehen. You should understand what was the conduct of these people and their actions. Then taskil b'meh yisrate ish ha'melech hahu. Then you will comprehend how a person can be appeased to the king. V'tishamer mikol hanhaga ki'im chavit b'hamelech. And you will guard against any type of behavior except that which the king desires. Okay, so when you are going in front of someone who is powerful, right? You should interview the people who have had that position in the past and figure out what worked and what didn't work and learn from their mistakes and from their successes. Okay. So, and it's remarkable how many people don't do this. How many people will go in, they're just so confident in their own abilities that they think their own abilities can somehow like perceive the reality of the king and know like what to do to succeed and what mistakes to make, So the common example of this is if you're going to work for a new boss, talk to all the people who work for that boss ahead of time and understand what sets this guy off, how do you get on his good side, what should I at all costs avoid, and then you'll be successful. Okay, so that's his first piece of advice. Okay, and then he says, "V'yesh lefarish bin tavin hayoshvim lefanecha." The other explanation is understand the people who are sitting before you. Shelo teshiv lamala min hanechbad v'hatov mimecha. You should not sit above people who are more honored than you and who are better than you. V'takir hamakom haroilach, and you should understand the place that is fit for you. Okay, this is a mistake you'll see people make. The expression read the room, you got to read the room, So there are people who are new to the room and will not stop to read the room, let's say an example of this is, this is not exactly analogous, but people who would join a shiur, okay? And the shiur has been going for a long time and the same people who have been in the shiur for a long time. And then the newbie will immediately without knowing what the protocols of the shiur are, or like when he should speak, will just jump in and just start foisting their own priorities upon things, Or the other example of this is, let's say you see the case of in TV shows where you have people who are in an aristocratic society who have their proper thing and using the proper spoons and this is what you should do to be polite and not, and then they'll just come in and they'll do the wrong thing, So it's saying read the room. No, don't sit in someone's seat if you don't know, if you don't know who sits where, and and don't make any false moves like that. Yeah. Okay. So that's his first idea. Okay. Second pasuk. He says, where is he? Left side. When they bring in front of you delicacies that are pleasing to you, don't fill your belly with them, lest you destroy, and I think tivla he's using here as to ruin, to annihilate the power of your stomach. Okay, don't eat these in a way that's gonna be bad for your digestion. Okay, and you got to remember also, I don't know if this exactly translates over because our diet is so messed up anyway, but if you imagine people who never ate sugar, let's say, right? Or never ate meat because they were too poor. And then you go to the king's table and they eat all of these sugary or fatty foods, it's going to throw their digestive system for a loop, So, and it's going to harm them. He says, stomachs are the cause of all illnesses, or all illnesses. They're the chief offender, right, for illnesses. Vashenis, and the second thing is ki hanimshach achrei tanugim, is someone who's drawn after pleasures. Yipared me'al darchei hanefesh hachachama. They will depart from the ways of the wise soul. So he's learning nefesh not as your animalistic soul, but as your rational soul. Is the more you get involved in pleasure, the more it's going to take you away from chachma. Okay. It says earlier in Mishlei, the tzaddik eats to satiate his soul. Okay, meaning he only eats for the Rambam in Hilchos Deos Perek Gimel. He eats in order to be able to take care of his health, to be strong so that he can know Hashem. So that's his nefesh. V'amru zal su'udasacha shehanasacha mimena mashoch yadcha mimena. The su'uda that you have pleasure from, withdraw your hand from it. Okay, that's just, I guess, a reinforcement of here. Okay, so in other words, second idea is don't overeat to the point where it's going to harm your stomach, and don't overeat to the point where it's going to harm your nefesh. Okay, so that's putting a knife at your neck, meaning I think Isaac said after shiur yesterday, that the part of you that swallows food needs to have a very, very effective stopper there, because you shouldn't swallow more than is going to be good for you. Okay, third idea. And then after I do this, you tell me what the main difference is methodologically between Saadia Gaon and Rabbeinu Yonah, even though the ideas are clear. Al tisav l'mata mosav, don't desire his delicacies. Yaz here, shalo yishtadel Adam lihios ba'ochle shulchan hamelech l'tavas hamadanim. It's warning you not to be among the people who eat at the king's table because of their desire for delicacies. V'hu lechem kazavim milashon asher yichzvu meima, because it is inconsistent bread, like Saadia Gaon said. U'b'inyan ki im tesh yeshiv ish imo yamim achadim. If a person sits with you for a couple of days, misham yipared achrei kain v'bakish hergal hatanugim. Then he's going to leave you and he's going to seek the desires he was habituated to. V'yashchis mamono v'yivaresh. Not yoresh. He will he'll squander his money and he will become impoverished, like from the word rash. As it says, a guzzler and a gorger and a guzzler will become impoverished. And he's warning you against becoming close to people who are in power. Because Chazal warn you that it's going to be that becoming close to the Malchus is one of the things that will take you away from it'll cause you to be disliked by people and by God, right? Who did that happen to? Who in Tanakh became overly involved in politics and ended up Shaul? Sorry, let me back up. There's a lot of cases where people became too high politically and then they went away from Hashem. But there's a specific case where it says some tzaddik became too involved in politics, and then other tzaddikim in the door ended up not liking him and separating from him. We read it every year. Mordechai, right? This is the last pasuk in the Megillah.
Really? People didn't like Mordechai anymore?
Yeah. Ki Mordechai ha-Yehudi mishnei lamelech Achashverosh v'gadol Yehudim. So Mordechai, the Judahite, was second to the king Achashverosh and great among the Judahites. V'ratzui l'rov echav, and he was favorable to the majority of his people. Doresh tov lemo v'dover shalom l'chol zaro, and Rashi says, by most of his people, but not to everybody. That factions of Sanhedrin distanced themselves from him. Because he became close to the Malchus and stopped learning. Okay, so that's at least a Shita in Rashi. Okay, so
wow. I'm gonna take that up this year. That's really cool.
You love okay, no, right. Okay. I was saying you love the things that expose the faults of tzaddikim. Yeah, that's true. It's true. I mean, that's why Chazal said them. Okay, so Rabbeinu Yonah here is basically saying the first idea is what Saadia Gaon said: don't become too used to their delicacies. And the second idea is that it's going to harm your soul to be close to the Malchus because you can end up compromising your values. Okay, so to sum it up, Rabbeinu Yonah says on the first pasuk, it is saying that when you go in front of someone powerful, then do your research, figure out other people who are in similar positions to know how to succeed. Secondly is don't overeat, okay, because that's going to harm your stomach and your soul. And then third is don't become habituated to these pleasures, because that will you won't have them anymore, and that's going to cause problems, and you're going to end up also becoming close to the Malchus in order to get these pleasures, and then that's going to ruin your it's going to make people and God not like you. So what do you see differently about the way that Saadia Gaon approached the three Pesukim and the way that the Rabbeinu Yonah approached them? Yeah.
Rabbeinu Yonah kind of seemed to just go all at once.
Saadia Gaon, yeah.
Seemed to go. I just collate the three Pesukim. Rabbeinu Yonah goes pasuk.
Okay, that's definitely true. And can you just explain a little bit more though about the type of ideas that each of them focus on?
What was Saadia Gaon again?
Saadia Gaon said, "Don't become accustomed to things that are not constant." And for example, the king.
Well, one is more focused on the on the other individual versus yourself. Meaning Rabbeinu Yonah was more focused on what you can do to make sure you're protected, or what you can do to help better your lifestyle versus putting it on the other guy.
Well, didn't Saadia Gaon was also about not becoming addicted to pleasure.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So the interesting thing is like this, and I think this is what you were getting at. So Saadia Gaon takes these three as one idea. So that's what you said. Rabbeinu Yonah treats this cluster as a snapshot of a Mishlei scenario and then derives many unrelated ideas. Okay, so one scenario, unrelated. I mean, the idea of like investigating how to get in the good graces of the king is a completely unrelated idea to like not becoming addicted to pleasures, right? So what's interesting about it is, this is really the skill that we are trying to develop by learning Mishlei every day, which is to be able to, when you first start off in Mishlei, you're a Mishlei Chacham, which means, well, you're not Mishlei Chacham. The first level of success in Mishlei is your Mishlei Chacham, which means that you know particular Mishlei ideas and you can apply them to scenarios that the Psukim talk about. But then a Mishlei Navon is someone who can extrapolate to new scenarios where you are confronted with an area and you generate Mishleic ways of thinking, whether or not they come from specific psukim. So I think this cluster of psukim, according to Rabbeinu Yonah, is a good exemplification of that, which is you're in the scenario of a king. In reality, it's one scenario, but there's many Mishleic factors going on, and you have to be like operating on many Mishleic things to protect yourself fully, So I think it is interesting in terms of it shows you that like when we looked at these psukim, or when I prepared them, when I made the source sheet with three of them, it's clear that they all go together. But you see from here, you don't have to necessarily come up with one unified idea. This is like the opposite of a list pasuk, right? A list pasuk is a pasuk where it's one scenario and you extrapolate many ideas from it. This is like three psukim that describe one scenario, and you can get a different idea from each one.
So hold on, so just to clarify. So meaning, is it because there are three different psukim you're able to get ideas that are not unified versus one pasuk?
It's a good question. I mean, I've seen him do this in one pasuk as well. To say like there are multiple dimensions of the thing that this pasuk is talking about, but I haven't really seen. I can't recall an example of this before where he has a cluster that he doesn't try to unify.
So how do you? In terms of methodology, like for us, like how are we? Because he does it, we could obviously model from it. But how do we know how far we go?
So what I would say is that I still think that striving to get one idea is where you should aim. That's where you should aim for. I think that's more pleasing to the mind. But if you failing that, if you don't do that, then see if you can get an idea from each one. And what'll happen probably also is, let's say like we didn't have Saadia Gaon and we knew this principle of Rabbeinu Yonah, we would define each of the three, and then either that would lead to a unified idea, or at the end of the day, we come out with three ideas from one cluster, 3 ideas from one cluster. So that's fine. So I think you aim for like the one unified idea.
But we always have a theme for the three.
So here's a good way to say it. There's no theme, there's a scenario, right? There's no unifying theme of the ideas, but there is a scenario which gives rise to many pieces of advice. Yeah. Now, did you say you had a derech and nistar approach possibly? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. So I want to say that sitting to eat with the ruler really just means any time that you are like interacting with your you call it Yitzhahara.
Okay, good.
Like the animal, so which is like almost all the time.
Yeah. Which
makes good advice.
Yeah.
And that specifically eating is just like a prime example of like desires.
Yeah.
And that's why it's specifically like focusing on like the eating and like placing it in your throat specifically.
Yeah.
And master of your soul is just somebody who's working on perfection.
Yeah.
Like generally like how taking it. And then lusting for his delicacies are like all the ways that the Yitzhahara uses to like show you like, oh, this is a great thing.
Yeah.
But, like really, we know like from the Yitzhahara, like he's like a serpent. He's lying.
Yeah.
He's just like covering everything up, making it all look great.
Yeah.
And that you should be like extremely cautious whenever it comes. At the end of the day, you have to indulge. I mean, you have to eat, right?
Yeah,
you have to eat. You have
right.
to, you have to, do all these things that require pleasure.
Yeah.
And you have to be like extremely careful. And I think someone said it yesterday that like, I think you or Jew said, like when you have a knife to your throat, like one wrong move or like, eat a little bit too much and it slits your throat.
Right.
So like in that sense, like if you indulge just a little bit too much, and he's gonna like, then
I think that's a great interpretation. We're going to check out the Malbim in a second, the Meiri, just to see if that's the direction he takes. I don't know, but that again, it's in line with the Meiri's general approach, which is whenever you have a mashal of a ruler and someone who's poor, That's the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov. And I think just one little addition here, which is we've talked about this before. There is a tendency that when you give into your emotions, you say, I'm just going to give all into it. But no, that's idiotic. Like, just because you have to give into your emotions doesn't mean you give all in. You still do damage control, So let's see just really quickly if the Meiri says something similar to this. Derech nistar. Yeah, it's on the same page that we were on. With derech nistar, pure shuhu razal. So Chazal explained, B'talmid hayoshiv lifnei rabo. Okay, that's a different approach. Let me just skim and see if he does give your approach. The next page, left column, V'libo od lefaresh. I am curious what he says about the Rab, but we don't have time to do that. I want to explain otherwise, additionally, Moshe al-Melech, that's talking about the king, which is the Yetzer Hara, V'lilchom inyan milchama. Yeah, right. Because that is how we say it, that is how we conjugate the word. When you sit down to wage war with the Yetzer Hara, bin tavin, shetzizbonin b'shiur ma shetzarech b'hamatasu v'hashpalasu v'hachna'asa. You should understand the measure with which you will need to diminish it, lower it, and submissify it. To borrow a fake word from inspired by Chaim. V'im yireh atzma of bal nefesh. If you see yourself as a bal nefesh, like Saadia Gaon said, you're bal taiva. Hirbe b'hishtadlus b'netia gedola el hakate achron. Then you should strive excessively to go to the opposite extreme. You should put a muzzle on your mouth. The sakin begronecha kimaat ad kala, and put a knife on your throat to the point where you're almost killing, like being killed. Don't desire his delicacies at all. This is a bread of kazav. Arev bizman achilaso, sweet at the time of eating. Va'achriso kenachash yashuch katzif oni yafrish. It's going to bite you like a snake and like a poisonous snake. So this is the approach of the abstinence-based approach to dealing with addiction, right? That if you are addicted to something, you can't make any allowances for it, right? You have to completely go to the opposite extreme because any amount of giving in is going to make you go all the way to the extreme, So yeah. Okay, good. All right, nice. Okay, good pasuk. I am curious what he says about the Talmud Chacham thing. Maybe I'll glance at it and then we can start off tomorrow before Q&A doing that. We'll see. Yeah. Okay. Good ideas.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.